Somewhere right now, in a country you've probably never heard of, a small group of Americans is doing something the government will never fully confirm. No press release, no headlines, no credit. They live in the space between what's known and what's classified. These are the men and women of United States Special Operations, and this is all of them, Delta Force. The unit that officially doesn't exist, except everyone knows it does, and pretending otherwise is just part of the brand. Officially called 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, unofficially called the unit, practically called whatever they want because nobody argues with them. Delta was born out of failure. After the catastrophic Iranian hostage rescue attempt in 1980, where aircraft collided in the desert and 8 Americans died before a single hostage was touched, the military had to face a brutal truth. It didn't have a force capable of complex hostage rescue at the highest level. Colonel Charlie Beckwith had been pushing for this unit for years. That disaster handed him the argument. In reality, Delta became the sharpest instrument in America's counterterrorism toolkit. Selection breaks the vast majority of candidates, and those are already elite soldiers. The final assessment is deliberately vague. Survivors don't celebrate, they report for work. What most people miss, Delta recruits heavily from Rangers and Special Forces, but also pulls from regular Army units, a signal specialist, a logistics sergeant. If they pass selection, they're in. The unit cares about cognitive performance, not just physical dominance. That distinction is what separates Delta from the mythology people build around it. Delta Force doesn't need the credit. And somehow, that's the most intimidating thing about them. SEAL Team 6? If Delta is the Army's answer to the hardest problems, SEAL Team 6 is the Navy's answer delivered faster, louder, and with considerably more media attention, whether they want it or not. Formerly known as the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, this unit sits at the absolute apex of naval special warfare. It was founded in 1980 by Richard Marcinko, a man whose personnel file reads like a thriller novel. He essentially forced the unit into existence by bypassing normal bureaucratic channels. The Navy later decided that was a bit too much. He was convicted of defrauding the government. The unit remained. In practice, Development Group became America's most operationally active Tier 1 unit. The Bin Laden raid in 2011 put them in every headline on Earth, which created a complicated relationship with the secrecy the unit depends on. Operators who had spent careers in the shadows suddenly became the subject of books, movies, and congressional hearings. Some handled it well, others did not. Here's what people miss. Development Group isn't just door kickers. It has multiple assault squadrons, a mobility element, and an intelligence cell. The development mission is embedded in the name itself. Most people forget that entirely. The unit built its legend in the dark. The light hasn't always been kind to it. Navy SEALs. Before there's a development group, there has to be a SEAL. And most SEALs will never reach that level, and they're still some of the most capable special operators on Earth. Basic underwater demolition SEAL training known as BUDS has a dropout rate that routinely exceeds 70%. Hell Week runs candidates for roughly 5.5 days on approximately 4 hours of sleep total. It is designed specifically to find out who quits when quitting becomes the most rational decision available. What BUDS doesn't prepare you for is everything that comes after. Regular SEAL teams operate across direct action, reconnaissance, counterterrorism, and training foreign forces. The quality varies by team, by platoon, by deployment. Some platoons execute flawlessly under impossible conditions. Others have had documented disciplinary problems that raised uncomfortable questions about culture and accountability. That's the honest version. The brand is immaculate. The institution is human. The gap between those two things has caused friction for years. What SEALs bring that almost nobody else does, the maritime domain. A SEAL can approach a target from the ocean at night, at depth, in cold water, having parachuted in hours earlier. When the target is near water, SEALs are the answer. 75th Ranger Regiment. Some units are scalpels. The Rangers are a sledgehammer with a computer attached. The 75th Ranger Regiment is the Army's premier large-scale raid force. 3 battalions capable of seizing airfields, conducting direct action, and doing it fast enough that the enemy has no time to react. They were doing it in Normandy, they were doing it in Panama, They were boots on the ground in Afghanistan within weeks of September 11th. Here's what surprises people about Rangers. They're young, deliberately young. The pipeline produces high-volume, high-intensity soldiers who operate at a pace that exhausts most experienced troops. That youth is a feature, not a flaw. The Ranger ethos is built on aggression and speed and the willingness to go in first. Some operators describe the regiment as the best experience of their early careers and then immediately applied to a Tier 1 unit to get out of it. The regiment's response to that is essentially, good. You came in as a soldier, you left as something the next unit can actually use. Rangers lead the way, they've been saying that since 1943. They're still right. Green Berets. Forget the action movie version. The Green Beret's most lethal capability isn't a rifle, it's a conversation. United States Army Special Forces are built around a concept called unconventional warfare, training, advising, and leading indigenous forces behind enemy lines. Each operational detachment alpha, the famous A-Team, is a 12-man unit of specialists. Weapons sergeants, medics, engineers, communications experts, intelligence sergeants, and a command element. They are designed to multiply combat power by making other people better at fighting. In Afghanistan and Iraq, Special Forces teams embedded with local forces in ways conventional units simply couldn't. A team commander who speaks the local language and has spent 6 months building relationships with a village elder can accomplish things that a full battalion of infantry cannot. The problem is, it's slow. In a military culture that rewards measurable kinetic results, the patient work of foreign internal defense rarely gets the credit it deserves. Teams spent years building partner force capability, only to watch it collapse when support was withdrawn. That's not a Special Forces failure. That's a policy failure that Special Forces soldiers lived with personally. The beret is green, the work is gray, and most of it will never be a movie, Marine Raiders. The Marine Corps didn't want to be in special operations. Then they decided if anyone was going, it was going to be Marines. Marine Forces Special Operations Command was officially established in 2006, making it the youngest component of United States Special Operations Command. The Corps had long resisted the pull toward the command, partly out of institutional pride. Marines already considered themselves elite, and partly out of concern that a special operations element would drain talent from the conventional force. Both concerns were valid. Both were eventually overruled. Marine Raiders operate across direct action, special reconnaissance, and foreign internal defense. Critics within the special operations community have sometimes questioned whether another unit doing similar tasks was necessary. Raiders themselves would tell you the question misses the point. They're not trying to be Delta, they're trying to be the best Marines doing the hardest jobs available. The original Raiders fought in the Pacific with almost nothing and asked for more. The current ones inherited that standard. Pararescuemen. Their motto is, that others may live. That is not marketing. That is a job description written in the moments when every other option ran out. Pararescuemen, known as PJs, are the Air Force's combat search and rescue specialists. They exist for one purpose: to go into hostile environments, reach downed aircrew or isolated personnel, provide advanced trauma care, and extract them alive. The pipeline is among the longest and most punishing in the entire military. Candidates go through combat diving, airborne school, military freefall, survival training, and an 18-month apprenticeship that produces a paramedic-level trauma specialist who can also fight their way to a patient and jump from altitude in the dark. PJs make life-and-death medical decisions while taking fire, in darkness, in weather that grounded everyone else. The emotional weight of being the last resort for someone who didn't make it, that's something the community carries quietly. When the helicopter goes down and nobody else can get there, the PJs go. That's not a slogan. That's the only acceptable answer. Night Stalkers. The mission doesn't happen without the ride. And the ride is more dangerous than most people realize. The 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, fly the helicopters that insert and extract Tier 1 forces, modified Black Hawks, Chinooks, and Little Birds. At night, at low altitude, at high speed. In conditions conventional aviation units are not cleared to operate in, their standard is called plus or minus 30 seconds mission timing, every time. They were forged from the same failure as Delta Force, the 1980 hostage rescue disaster that made clear dedicated special operations aviation wasn't a luxury, it was a requirement. The human cost is significant. Night Stalkers lost aircraft and crews in some of the most consequential operations in recent military history, including Mogadishu in 1993, where crews continued flying through the night to pull survivors out, receiving the highest awards the military offers. Several of those awards were posthumous. Nobody else can do what they do. That's not pride. That's the gap in the capability chart that they fill alone. Psychological operations. The most underestimated weapon in the United States military doesn't fire bullets, it changes minds. Psychological operations, also called military information support operations, is the force designed to influence foreign audiences, leaflet drops, radio broadcasts, face-to-face engagement. The goal is always the same: change what the enemy believes, change what they do, without firing a shot if possible. The problem the community has always wrestled with is measuring effectiveness. Did the enemy surrender because of the messaging, or because they were out of food? Did the population cooperate because of the campaign, or because the coalition built their road? The attribution problem is real, and it means psychological operations rarely gets credit when things go well. Modern operators are trained in behavioral psychology, media production, language, and cultural analysis. The most powerful message is delivered by a credible messenger, and credibility is built over years, not days. The weapon nobody sees coming is the one that works before the shooting starts. Civil affairs. They show up after the bombs fall. And what they do next determines whether the war was actually won. Civil affairs operators are the bridge between the military and the civilian population. They assess infrastructure, coordinate with local governments, and work to prevent the grievances that turn a military victory into a political catastrophe. The honest version: civil affairs operators frequently describe a career-defining tension between what they know is needed long-term institution building, genuine development, years of patient engagement in what they're given, short deployments, rotating priorities, and a command culture that measures success in kinetic terms. These soldiers are among the most educated in the special operations community. Many hold graduate degrees, many speak multiple languages. They chose the most complicated mission in the force. When the guns go quiet, civil affairs is still working, and the outcome of that work shapes whether the quiet lasts. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers. They stand in the most dangerous place on the battlefield, and they call in the fire. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, known as JTACs, are the specialists qualified to direct close air support onto enemy targets. A fighter jet orbiting at altitude, carrying precision munitions, guided by one person on the ground with a radio and a laser designator, and the full responsibility not to kill the wrong people. That is the job. The margin for error is essentially zero: a misread grid coordinate, a laser that drifts. The consequences are measured in lives. Every qualified JTAC carries that weight on every mission. In practice, JTACs embedded with Special Operations Forces are among the most continuously deployed specialists in the military. The demand has exceeded supply for most of the last 2 decades. What makes a great JTAC isn't just technical skill, it's judgment under pressure, knowing when to call it, when to wait, when to abort. The aircraft is moving at 500 miles an hour. The window is seconds. The math has to be right the first time. These are the people who live and operate in the distance between what America is willing to say out loud and what it actually needs done. Different missions, different uniforms, different cultures. Same threshold. When everything else has failed, or when failure simply isn't an option, these are the ones who answer the call. No press conferences, no parades, just the work. And somewhere right now the work is happening